Previously on The Chosen People.
How can we trust what we cannot see? Where is our God? We could see the gods of Egypt. We had statues, temples, and monuments. Is the Lord a nomad? Does he come and go like Moses?
Moses turned to the elders and stretched out his arms. His staff was in his right hand. His knuckles were white around its shaft, steady and ready to strike.
Is the Lord among us or not?
No answer from the men, just a confused silence.
Is the Lord among us or not?
Again, the elders shrugged, unsure of how to answer.
I ask you again, is the Lord among us or not?
Moses gripped his staff with both hands, widened his stance, shifted his hips, and swung it at the stone. He struck it with brutal force, causing the outer layer of shale to crack. Immediately, a geyser burst out of the rock, spilling water out into the dirt below. The elders recoiled in shock and immediately rushed to the water to drink. Soon enough, the water found a crag and flowed downward towards the Israelite camp. Like the rivers cutting through Eden, the refreshing spring of God brought life. They were his children, his chosen people. He would not let them fall.
If you will diligently listen to my voice, and do that which is right in my eyes, and give ear to my commandments, and keep all my statutes, I will put none of the disease on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer.
Legends, the greatest social casino and sportsbook experience, has arrived at Legends.com. With thousands of the best free-to-play casino-style games, chances to earn millions of bonus coins and win real money. Legends is revolutionizing the Vegas experience wherever you are. If you love winning, then you'll love playing at LEGENDZ.com. Legends is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Visit Legends.com for more information. Legends with a Z.com is legendary fun.
In the throes of battle, it was not the sword, but the uplifted arms of Moses that led to victory. Shalom, my friends from here in the Holy Land. I'm Yael Eckstein with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Welcome to the Chosen People. Have you ever wondered why some battles shape the soul of a people? Why some conflicts carve out the identity of a nation? Today, we step into the shadow of a fierce struggle that tested the heart of Israel. The Scourge of Amalek, a story of conflict, perseverance, and divine intervention. But more than that, it beckons us to question the nature of our own battles. Why does God allow us to face such trials? And how do we find strength when our enemies rise against us?
Legends, the greatest social casino and sportsbook experience, has arrived at Legends.com. With thousands of the best free-to-play casino-style games, chances to earn millions of bonus coins and win real money. Legends is revolutionizing the Vegas experience wherever you are. If you love winning, then you'll love playing at LEGENDZ.com. Legends is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Visit Legends.com for more information. Legends with a Z.com is legendary fun.
This is Ashley Canetti from the Ben and Ashley I Almost Famous podcast. It feels like everyone is talking about GLP-1s these days. Those are Ozempic and semaglutide. And with Future Health, you can find out if they're right for you too. Maybe you feel like you've been struggling with your weight for years, and no matter how much you diet and exercise, you just don't feel healthy. Just go to tryfh.com to find out if weight loss meds are right for you.
Tryfh.com.
Future Health is not a healthcare services provider. Meds are prescribed at provider's discretion. Results may vary. Sponsored by Future Health.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on what your kids are spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely. And parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/iHeart.
Hoshea sat up on the incline of the rolling hill on a rocky outcropping, absent-mindedly sharpening his hunting knife. He wasn't sure why he brought it with him that day. He had never needed anything beyond his staff to ward off predators from his family's flock. With everyone clustered around the only water source in the area, help was never more than a shout away. But yet, something prompted him to pocket the knife that morning when he arose. It was one of the few possessions that he took from Egypt. In fact, it was one of the only possessions he had at all. His parents had died before their exodus following the prophet Moses. All that remained for him and his siblings was a threadbare inheritance of a few tools and tattered garments. Hoshea gripped the knife. He did not relish the reminder of his life as a slave, but the blade was a useful tool, and Hoshea was nothing if not practical. It was also perhaps a good reminder of the violence and oppression they had escaped. Others may be content to complain about their short memories, but Hoshea was determined to remember the miraculous and wondrous things their God had done on their behalf. Hoshea went back to methodically sharpening his knife, when between strokes he heard the undeniable snap of a twig behind him. The hair on the back of his neck stood. He whirled around and jumped to his feet. To his horror, a heavily armored man was climbing the slope behind him, clearly trying to catch him unawares. Time stood still, and the two men locked eyes. Hoshea in his thin linen shepherd's clothes and a small hunting blade, and the man, a mysterious warrior, wielding a lethal jagged sword and other blades strapped to his leather armor. He had almost a foot and at least a decade on young Hoshea. Hoshea still gripped his knife, but his staff leaned uselessly on the rock beside him, just out of reach. A knife would invite close combat, and Hoshea did not want to engage him in hand-to-hand combat with the man's superior reach and armor. Hoshea glanced over to his staff to judge how far away it was to grab. The warrior took Hoshea's diverted gaze as an opportunity and charged forward, lifting his sword above his head and angling it down, a blow that would surely split Hoshea's unprotected skull with minimal effort. Hoshea's eyes locked on the man in terror, abandoning the idea of grabbing for his staff. Hoshea did the only thing that came to his stupefied mind. He yelled out of pure adrenaline and instinct, closed his eyes, and threw a dagger at the man who was ferociously closing the gap between them, weapon at its full apex. A squelching thump of a blade finding flesh, and then a dull crumpling of a body hitting dust made Hoshea open his eyes. By some miracle, his blade found the only gap in the man's armor at his neck. Blood was still pumping as it spurted in an unsightly death rattle rhythm from the entry wound. He would have stood in shock for who knows how long. However, movement down the hill caught his eye. His mouth dropped as he beheld a sizable host emerging from the haze of the desert at the bottom of the hill. He saw the tips of their spears above their heads and mighty shields in their hands. They were still a ways off, and the heat of the desert distorted his view, but he could only assume they were as heavily armored as his attacker had been. The man had probably been a scout, he realized. Hoshea was the lone occupier of the only high ground where they camped, but this hill also blocked the host from view, and it would take them only a short time to realize that their scout was not returning. Fear pushed back the wave of nausea Hoshea was feeling from the sickening sight of his kill. Terror gripped him as he realized that the armed force could mount this hill and be upon their camp in a matter of minutes. He had to tell someone. He had to have survived this encounter for some reason, and he supposed this was it. Forgetting his lodged knife in the corpse's neck, Hoshea scooped up his staff from the rock and sprinted down the hill toward camp, screaming as loud as his lungs could support and raising the alarm that an attack was imminent. Moses was nursing a mounting headache as he listened to two men air their grievances when the boy careened into camp shouting,
"Invaders! We're about to be attacked! Over that hill!"
Moses dismissed the men in front of him and nodded to Aaron, Miriam, and Hur, Miriam's son, to go and intercept the boy. They immediately did as he bid, and not even a heartbeat later, the boy was panting before him.
Quickly, my son, what did you see?
Moses, beyond that hill, there's a great host, maybe several hundred men. They're not Egyptian, but they are heavily armed. I was able to kill their scout before I ran here, but they will notice he is missing soon and surely attack.
Your name, my son?
Oh, Hosea, son of Nun.
Your people?
My people?
Your tribe, Hosea, son of Nun. Who are they?
Ephraim. I am of the tribe of Ephraim.
Besides the hesitation in naming his tribe, this Hoshea had proven himself valuable by dispatching the scout. The young man standing before Moses was unassuming enough. He was grown, but still young, and lacked the gravitas to stand before his leader and speak confidently. But he was quick on his feet, and their God had granted him success and brought him here to warn Moses of the coming threat. Perhaps the boy, like his nation, could be molded. Aaron entered the tent swiftly, returning with a report.
It's true, Moses. We're hearing reports of a host of men just beyond that ridge. The boy has spoken true. Our scouts estimate the numbers to be 500 or so.
500? Against our 600,000 men? How could they even dare against our numbers? And our numbers are even greater beyond the fighting men.
Using the term fighting men for what we have is awfully generous of you, my son. How many of our men have actually wielded weapons, much less seen battle?
Aren't there a few who served as mercenaries in Pharaoh's army?
Perhaps a dozen of them, and they're old and rickety now. Hardly enough to count on, unfortunately.
These approaching soldiers are fully armed with spears, swords, and shields. They may even have archers amongst their ranks. Oh, God save us. Most of our fighting men carry clubs and axes for defending their flocks. What are such weapons against bronze and iron?
But still, perhaps they just mean to scare us off. We are camped around the only drinkable water in the area. They cannot truly intend to destroy millions. And do we know who they are?
There are rumblings that there are Amalekites.
The line of Edom.
Sons of Esau?
Yes, these Amalekites are of Edom, descendants of Esau through his first son Eliphaz.
Yes, and perhaps the first of many foes we will meet before we enter Canaan. They have traveled very far to have encountered us here.
They are nomads in this land, and we stand between them and the only water source for miles. We must stand against them and show them we are not worth the effort.
The three advisors dipped their heads in agreement. Hoshea watched them intently and with intelligent eyes, but seemed content to be forgotten in the flurry of discussion between Moses' inner circle.
Hoshea, select some men for us and go fight against Amalek. Tomorrow, I will stand up on the hilltop with our God's staff in my hand.
Hoshea gaped at Moses' words, but as the other three heads turned to him in surprise, he straightened his shoulders and held his head high before nodding in acknowledgement. Moses was pleased. His instincts were right about this one.
Go now and make your selections and ready them for the battle. We only have a few swords at our disposal. Be sure to take one for yourself. See what weapons the other men have. If we have archers or those who can use a sling, organize them first and see what you can find for shields. You want to make sure our front lines are secure before you do anything else. And leave a small company in reserve behind to protect the women and children.
Yes, Lord Moses. I will go now and see it done.
With that, young Hoshea ran off. Moses turned back to his advisors.
That's a lot of trust for a boy you just met, Moses. He's a lamb of a boy against wolves.
We are all lambs, Miriam, lest you forget how the Lord delivered us from Pharaoh.
Very well, my brother. What will you have me do?
Miriam, you are to organize the women and children. Draw them in close so the defenders young Hoshea raises will not be spread too thin. Aaron and Hur, you're with me. Tomorrow, at dawn, we'll view the battle from above and call upon the help of our God.
Hoshea's sweaty hands gripped his staff, and he drew a shuddering breath as he beheld the Amalekite army marching toward them. It may have been Hoshea's imagination, but either the ground was shaking beneath the steady march of their impending footsteps, or his heartbeat had traveled fully into his head and was spilling out his ears. He could not recall a time he had ever been so scared. The Israelites stood before them in great numbers, but the tang of fear hung tensely in the air. They lacked experience and resources and courage. They had all been mere slaves only weeks ago. Hoshea had organized the men as Moses had asked. He delegated each tribe to assign their men to various roles and gather what weapons they had. Hoshea stood at the back of the great host in the general's position. He was still dumbfounded that anyone had listened to him at all, but they had, and now they kept looking between him, the tiny figure of Moses on the hilltop, and the nearing enemy army. Hoshea was tempted to despair. He felt unqualified because, well, he was. He was no warrior. Hoshea's shoulders slunk downward, but then a young man from the tribe of Judah placed a hand on his shoulder. His brow was furrowed with determination. His voice was deep for a man his age, but deeply reassuring.
Do not be afraid, Hosea. Remember the mighty things that staff has done in Lord Moses' hand.
We await your command, Hosea.
Hoshea gave him a grateful smile and rallied his resolve. He then swallowed nervously, but schooled his face into neutrality as he kept his eyes on their leader, waiting for his command. The Amalekites halted before them in neat, disciplined lines. Their archers stood off and at an angle to avoid getting in the fray once the battle began in earnest. Their mighty shields were perfectly locked in an impenetrable line at the front of their column, and Hoshea could see a line of glistening spear tips extending far above them. Even if they somehow broke the line of shields, the spearmen could skewer them from a safe distance with a mighty blow. Far above their heads, carrion birds circled. One thing was sure, in mere hours they would feast on the armies below, no matter the outcome. The Amalekites seemed content to wait for the green Israelite army to make the first move. It was as if they could sense the unease and inexperience across the field. Hoshea kept his focus on the force, but out of the corner of his eye, waited for Moses' signal. He saw Moses take the staff in both hands and suddenly raised it over his head. Hoshea didn't realize how tightly he was wound until, in response to the staff being raised overhead, Hoshea let out a roar. To his surprise, it was joined almost instantaneously by the entire Israelite army. The front lines carried their battle cry in their lungs as they charged towards the enemy's fortified lines.
Archers! Knock! Draw! Loose!
In answer, a thrum of arrows soared from bows and rained down on the shields of the Amalekites. By some miracle, many of the arrows found their marks, felling several shield-bearers. But the holes were quickly replenished with fresh men and shields. The front line of Israelites was almost to the enemy lines.
Archers, again! Knock! Draw! Loose!
For a second time, the arrows hummed over the army and found their marks. The lines faltered with this second wave, just as the Israelites met them with axes and clubs. Shepherds and farmers clobbered the stunned, seasoned Amalekites with unimaginable ferocity, beating them back as the next wave of Israelites flooded in to relieve them. Hoshea charged himself with another group of men. They burst through the broken lines with ferocity foreign to slaves and peasants. But they were no longer slaves. Hoshea thought it best to remind them.
Pharaoh has been slain. You are no longer chained men. You are free. Fight! Fight as free men!
The men around Hoshea cheered and hollered. They were doing it. Somehow, and against all reason or odds, they were defeating their enemy. Hoshea shouted along with them and beamed at their triumphant leader Moses, still holding his staff high above his head on the hill overlooking the battle. Sweat pooled at Moses' hairline and dripped down his neck. His knuckles were white and shaking as they gripped his staff above his head. Hoshea had found his stride leading the army. He orchestrated the few archers and slingshots he had to time their assault to proceed with the waves of attack on the front line, and they were successfully chipping away at the enemy's lines little by little. Without thinking, Moses began to lower his now trembling arms as he leaned forward to watch the faltering lines. Victory seemingly within grasp with just a few more charges forward. But suddenly, the booming voice of the Amalekite general sounded, and an ominous twang of bowstrings responded. Hundreds of Israelites from the middle of the army crumpled to the ground. They were well beyond the protection of the shields. Moses could sense the Israelites recoil in fear as their concentration and confidence broke. The Amalekite spearmen then charged forward, tilting their iron weapons forward through tiny gaps in the shields. They broke through the front lines with ease. The side columns of their army then broke off and flanked the Israelites as the archers took out another round of men behind the front lines. The coordinated effort effectively cut off the front lines from the rest of the army, to be destroyed with no hope of retreat.
Our men are waning, Moses!
What's happening? We were winning! And then...
Moses gaped helplessly at the scene before him. It all happened so fast. Aaron and Hur were equally engrossed in horror, but Moses realized what he had held in his hands. His God had promised to be with him and perform miraculous things with it. Moses thrust the staff into the air as he had for the first part of the battle, and in response, the Israelite forces surged forward, throwing down their enemies. Those who hemmed in suddenly fell away, and another round of arrows and slung rocks aided their retreat to regroup. However, Moses' arms tired quickly, and they shook to keep the staff in the air. It was like a battle with forces beyond gravity and the failing strength of his arm. He cried out in pain as the tremors of his arms shook through his entire body as exhaustion sapped his body. As his arms began to lower, the enemy surged forward and took out another score of men. Moses had been entrusted to protect every one of them. If his God required he aid them in this strange way, he would not fail. Though there were thousands of them, each life lost weighed on his soul. He gritted his teeth until his head felt like it might explode. He strained against fatigue and toed the ground around him without taking his eyes off the battle before him. He finally felt the rocky seat he sought and collapsed, using the boulder's edge to support his trembling arms.
I'm not sure I will last much longer.
Aaron and Hur tore their eyes away from the battle. They saw Moses waver and then turned back to see the battle's tides shift. They immediately realized what was happening. The momentum of the battle was dependent on Moses' resolve. Aaron rushed to his brother and wrapped his arms around his.
Oh, hold steady, little brother. I've got you.
Flashes of Moses as a babe came rushing back to him. He remembered holding his trembling body that fateful night when Pharaoh's men had come. Aaron's throat clenched and his chest tightened at the memory. He squeezed his brother, as if trying to somehow give him his strength. Ur came to his uncle's side as well and took the other arm. Each one took an arm and assisted Moses in keeping the staff raised above his head. With their combined strength, the staff was hoisted back in the air, and Hoshea was able to coordinate another successful strike. The Israelites stepped over their fallen brothers and enemies, threw themselves against shields, spears, and swords, and somehow prevailed. The ground was slick with blood and gore, but their steps were sure, and their aim was true. The three men held the staff steady together until the sun eventually went down, and the very last enemy soldier was thrown down. The last light of the day was slipping over the ridge. Hoshea slew a final enemy with a side swipe of his sword to the leg, then a sudden jab upward to the throat. The enemy fell. Then Hoshea whirled around and raised his sword above his head to strike whoever was behind him. He paused as he discovered it was only the man from the tribe of Judah standing before him, hands raised.
Steady, Hoshea. They're all dead. We won!
Hoshea loosed a shaky sigh, lowered his sword, and surveyed the ground around him. The man was right. Hoshea stood in the middle of a lopsided, rough half-circle of battered bodies. A haze of frenzied bloodlust Hoshea had not known existed within him lifted as he took in the horror of the battlefield. He still held the sword he had started with, but it was now stained crimson with chunks of gore stuck to the edges. He surveyed the slain enemies around him, then looked beyond and saw similar piles around his countrymen in irregular intervals. Carrion birds were already feasting on the bodies on the tops of the piles on the outskirts of the battle. Hoshea's knees suddenly gave out, and he pitched forward. His companion ran forward to aid him, but Hoshea feebly waved him back just in time to spare him from the vomit that spewed from his mouth. The man of Judah laughed as he clasped Hoshea on the shoulders and hoisted him to his feet.
You led us well, my friend, with courage far beyond your years or experience. None of us has experienced anything like this before. It's a wonder you held your stomach this long. I was sick myself before the battle even began. Thought I might as well get it out of the way so no one slipped on it on the field.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forget my manners. The name's Caleb, son of Jephunneh.
Thank you, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. I am Hosea, son of Nun.
Pleased to meet you, and even more pleased to share this victory with you. It looks like the prophet is summoning you.
Hoshea turned to look where Caleb gestured. Moses was standing on the edge of the field, waiting for Hoshea. He patted Caleb on the back by way of thanks and took his leave. Hoshea approached Moses and saw that Aaron and Hur were nearby, but respectfully out of earshot, so Moses could address Hoshea privately.
Hoshea, my son, you did everything I asked of you. You did well.
Thank you, Moses. That means a great deal coming from you.
As much as it grieves me to say this, I do not believe this battle will be the last of its kind. We have yet to cross into the Promised Land and have already met opposition. And the land itself is undoubtedly occupied by similar tribes and chiefdoms. I went to battle with my brothers in Egypt once or twice. However, I'm afraid age would keep me from leading the young men against our enemies. I'd have you lead the armies for me, Hoshea. Stand by my side and learn from me.
You honor me, Lord Moses.
You have an obedient and faithful spirit. With such a spirit, there's no limit to what you can do on behalf of God and for our people. Come, I'll have you walk with me. I've ensured that the events of today have been recorded. It's important that you remember what our God did today. You'll need to remember this when the days again get hard and hope is scarce.
Yes, sir. I will remember.
Legends, the greatest social casino and sportsbook experience, has arrived at Legends.com. With thousands of the best free-to-play casino-style games, chances to earn millions of bonus coins and win real money. Legends is revolutionizing the Vegas experience wherever you are. If you love winning, then you'll love playing at LEGENDZ.com. Legends is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Visit Legends.com for more information. Legends with a Z.com is legendary fun.
This is Jenny Garth from I Do Part 2. Everyone's talking about GLP-1s, like Ozempic, semaglutide. With Future Health, you can find out if they're right for you, too. Just go to tryfh.com, that's tryfh.com, and find out if weight loss meds are right for you in just 3 minutes.
Tryfh.com.
Future Health is not a healthcare services provider. Meds are prescribed at provider's discretion. Results may vary. Sponsored by Future Health.
Living a healthy life looks different for everyone, and Symbiotica is here to support your journey. Their products are free from seed oils, preservatives, toxins, and artificial additives, designed to complement your lifestyle. Plus, their liposomal vitamin C packets use cutting-edge technology for better absorption and results. Go to Symbiotica.com and use code IHEART at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. That's Symbiotica.com and use code IHEART at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping.
What a profound and stirring episode. The image of Moses, his arms raised, standing as a beacon of hope and strength, sends shivers down my spine. How he remained so steadfast, supported by Aaron and Hur, speaks to the power of community, of unwavering support in the face of adversity. It's a reminder that our battles, both physical and spiritual, are never fought alone. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, upheld by the strength of our ancestors and the presence of God. And seeing God's hand at work through his people's faithfulness gives me a renewed sense of courage and commitment to face my own struggles. Like Moses, we are each part of a story that is so much larger than ourselves. And I'll talk about Moses in a minute, but first let's talk about Amalek. In this story, the tribe of Amalek carried out a sneak attack on the Israelites for no rhyme or reason. Jewish tradition sees Amalek and its descendants as the epitome of evil, opposing the chosen people who stand for good. And so Amalek and its descendants are seen as the originators of anti-Semitism, the baseless hatred of the Jewish people that we have seen throughout history and that still we sadly see today. The great sage and Bible commentator Rashi says something very interesting. Rashi points out that once the world saw the miracles and wonders that God performed for the Jewish people, no nation dared attack us, seeing us as protected by the power of God. But the one exception was Amalek. This is like when someone jumps into a tub of scalding water, hot water that no one in their right mind would jump into, and that person gets burned. But by jumping in, he cools off the water. So now, no one is afraid to jump in anymore. Amalek attacked the chosen people, even though Amalek knew of God's relationship with us and of God's protective power. And now, with the water cooled off, other nations didn't hesitate to attack us. And so it is. With the anti-Semitism we still see growing and spreading today. All the enemies of Israel were eventually wiped out, leaving the Jewish people to stand tall. And yet the enemies of Israel don't learn their lesson. But I am proud to say that our millions of Christian friends around the world stand with us and against anti-Semitism. It's something all of us here at the Fellowship and in Israel recognize, look at as sacred, and we appreciate so very, very much. It is something holy, Jews and Christians standing together. And then here in verse 14, we find a wonderful promise from God. He promises, quote, "I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under the heavens," end quote. We don't know when this will be, but because God promised it, we know it will be. Evil will be destroyed, and good will prevail. So what can we glean from this story of Moses, his uplifted hands, and the battle against Amalek? Well, first, let's consider the act of raising hands in prayer. According to Jewish tradition, this physical gesture is more than symbolic. It's a conduit for divine energy. Moses' hands lifted towards the heavens created a spiritual bridge that channeled God's power into the physical world. Moses, standing with his hands raised, became a vessel for God's strength, showing us that divine assistance flows through human action intertwined with faith. You see, what I learned from this story is that when we lift our hands in prayer, we are tapping into a profound spiritual truth, that we are conduits for God's will and his presence in this world, that he uses us. Prayer, as Moses' actions show us, isn't just about expressing our needs. Prayer is also about about aligning ourselves with God's purpose, finding our way to Him, and drawing His blessings into our lives. This story also teaches us the importance of perseverance in prayer. Moses' hands grew weary, and he needed the support of Aaron and Hur to keep them raised. Isn't it true that in our lives we also sometimes grow weary? We need community, friends, and family to support us, to help keep our hands lifted when we feel like we just can't go on. As we face the Amalek in our lives, those forces that seek to bring us down, let's remember the hands of Moses. And let's lift our hearts, our hands, and our voices, knowing that we are not alone. God fights for us, and with His help, we can overcome any obstacle. So when you face your battles, big or small, take a moment to lift your hands. Reach out to God, seek His strength, and trust that with Him, you can prevail.
You can listen to The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein ad-free by downloading and subscribing to the pray.com app today. This pray.com production is only made possible by our dedicated team of creative talents. Steve Katina, Max Bard, Zach Schellebarger, and Ben Gammon are the executive producers of The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein, edited by Alberto Avila, narrated by Paul Coltofianu. Characters are voiced by Jonathan Cotton, Aaron Salvato, Sarah Seltz, Mike Reagan, Stephen Ringwald, Sylvia Zaradok, and the opening prayer is voiced by John Moore. Music by Andrew Morgan Smith. Written by Bree Roseley and Aaron Salvato. Special thanks to Bishop Paul Lanier, Robin Van Etten, Caleb Burrows, Jocelyn Fuller, and the team at International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. You can hear more Pray.com productions on the Pray.com app, available on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. If you enjoyed The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein, please rate and leave a review.
Legends, the greatest social casino and sportsbook experience, has arrived at Legends.com. With thousands of the best free-to-play casino-style games, chances to earn millions of bonus coins and win real money. Legends is revolutionizing the Vegas experience wherever you are. If you love winning, then you'll love playing at LEGENDZ.com. Legends is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Visit Legends.com for more information. Legends with a Z.com is legendary fun.
This is Ashley Canetti from the Ben and Ashley I Almost Famous podcast. You probably know somebody who's on Ozempic or semaglutide right now. These are really popular medications that people are using to lose weight if it seems like all other options aren't working for them. Go to tryfh.com to find out if weight loss meds are right for you. Tryfh.com.
Tryfh.com.
Future Health is not a healthcare services provider. Meds are prescribed at provider's discretion. Results may vary. Sponsored by Future Health.
Living a healthy life looks different for everyone, and Symbiotica is here to support your journey. Their products are free from seed oils, preservatives, toxins, and artificial additives, designed to complement your lifestyle. Plus, their liposomal vitamin C packets use cutting-edge technology for better absorption and results. Go to Symbiotica.com and use code IHEART at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. That's Symbiotica.com and use code IHEART at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping.
At David's Bridal, love is in every stitch. From the initial sketch to the final details, each style is designed with exquisite craftsmanship. Every wedding gown, bridesmaid look, prom dress, and special occasion style in between features handcrafted details filled with love. Come see the magic in person. Book an appointment and sign up for Diamond Loyalty to save 15% on your first purchase. Earn points towards special rewards and more at davidsbridal.com.
Stop hitting snooze on new tech. Upgrade the whole team at Lenovo.com. Unlock AI experiences with the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Powered by Intel Core Ultra processors, so you can work, create, and boost productivity all on one device. Win the tech search for business PCs at Lenovo.com.